Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Skrull, and this video we're breaking down one of the big reveals in Secret Invasion. If you've caught the finale, then you'll know that we finally see Rhodey getting freed from Skrull captivity, and him being one was supposed to be one of the show's big twists. All the way back in episode 3, we discovered that he'd been swapped out, and this came with a phone call to Vara summoning them to meet. Upon arriving at the church, she was ordered to kill her husband, and this is when it was hammered home that Rhodey was a Skrull.
And me, I'm 56 years old.
Damn! I'm sorry.
Revealed to be called Rava, this is actually a Skrull from the comics who ended up becoming a pirate that was imprisoned along with Black Bolt. Rava worked alongside him, whereas here she's clearly a villain that's desperate to be seen in her own skin. Now, one of the big questions that you probably have right now is, when exactly did she snatch him, and how long has Rhodey been a Skrull for?
Why don't you explain this to me like I'm 5?
Throughout this video, we're going to be breaking it all down and nailing exactly when it was that he was switched out. There are some people saying that it's Civil War, but we'll explain why that isn't actually the case. If you enjoy the video, please hit the thumbs up button, and also don't forget to subscribe for breakdowns like this every day. With that out of the way, huge thank you for clicking this. Now let's get into when Rhodey was a Skrull. Okay, so the finale has Gaia overpowering Gravik, and she blasts a hole through his chest, leaving him dead for good. No idea why he can't heal from this, as he also got stabbed there earlier, but we'll not comment on the finale, even though it's getting pretty pooped on online. 13% on Rotten Tomatoes, goddamn! Either way, after this, Gaia goes into where the humans are housed, and we see several of the faces who've popped up in the series. This includes the Daltons, the dealer from episode 1, and Everett Ross alongside Rhodey. Gaia says he's been held hostage for a long time and the character needs to be carried out so that he can get home. Now this shows that we have at least one definite moment in time that the one we were following had to be human. Rhodey of course crash landed during Civil War, and in the aftermath of the airport battle he ended up being paralysed. The fact he can't walk here shows that he at least went through that, and they aren't explaining the recast from Terrence Howard with some shape-shifting meta joke. Now, I have seen some people say that it could be because he's been there for so long that he's gained muscular atrophy, and because of this, he can now no longer walk. I doubt that's the case because it's going to set them back so much, and I think personally the creative team would just avoid doing that. Now, going back to the scene, Rhodey's wearing a hospital gown, which we also saw him wearing during Civil War. Put into an MRI machine, this is the last time we saw him wearing it, and because of this, people think that he was snatched right after this. Let's be honest, it would make sense too, and him going through this would give the opportunity to switcheroo.
But I'm not a rapper.
Going off the math, it would be a devastatingly long time as well, because Civil War actually happened during 2016. Secret Invasion is set during the year 2025, and going off the UFO hearings this week, yeah, we may be invaded by that point. Either way, this has left a lot of people thinking he was grabbed then, and because of this, fans have been getting bloody angry. It robs all the character development that Rhodey's gone through and everything that we saw happening with him in Endgame. However, I think there's two clues that show this isn't the case, and that Rhodey was grabbed by the Skrulls long after Endgame. Now, the biggest indicator of this comes down to his leg braces, which once more give him the ability to walk. These were seen during Avengers Infinity War, and he also had them on in Endgame as well. This happened not only at the start of the movie, but also at the end when he was at the funeral. During the point where Avengers HQ is attacked, we also have him rolling out his suit and he has to crawl across the floor. This is when he gets into his Mark II armor, but I doubt Rava would just lay there and keep up appearances because everything's going to hell. The cover to me at this point would have broke, so looking at this, yeah, I think it's still him. During the third act, we also see Rhodey's bleeding as well, and as we know, Skrull blood always shows as purple. Even when Rava's killed, the wall behind her lines with purple blood, which is a pretty important factor when it comes to their species. So therefore, he couldn't have been a Skrull during this unless they retroactively go back and are like, oh mate, look over there, well we changed the VFX. So yeah, I think at least during Endgame that he would have been normal, but it's at this point that things likely changed. Now, another reason that I don't think Rhodey was a Skrull before this is because of what we know when it comes to the Harvest. In the series, we learn it was at the funeral Fury had Skrulls moving around and collecting DNA so it could formulate the formula. This was made up of both villain and hero, and going off the list of names, it had to be then. People like Gamora and Mantis have only been at Earth during this period, so this indicates that this is the point in which most of them were grabbed. Now, at this time, Gravik was Team Fury, so it also doesn't make sense that they would have grabbed Rhodey before it. This is when he started to doubt what his master was up to, but any time before that, he wasn't swapping humans out. So it would have been weird for Raver to grab Rhodey before this because, as far as they knew, Fury was still trying to get them home. He'd of course been snapped for 5 years at this point, and I really doubt that they would have been holding that against him. What really seemed to anger the Skrulls was after this point when he went up to Saber and refused to come down. This was the switch that sent them off on their vendetta, so them grabbing Rhodey before this just doesn't really make sense. So I think with all the things here that Rhodey was still a human during Endgame, and if he's not, mate, we're gonna fucking kick off. I think stripping him of all the character development and saying goodbye to Tony would just anger fans to the point they would kick off with Feige directly. Talking about stealing his hat at one of those fancy premieres and running about with it and being like, I've got your hat. Now, from this point onwards, we get a clue that he was changed after this point due to how he appears in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The braces he had are now completely missing, and this is something that carried across to Secret Invasion 2. I think the brace elements used to demonstrate when he was a Skrull, and we should mainly go off them to nail the timeline down. Now technically, also this doesn't negate what Gaia says, and when we look at the timeline, it could still be a long time. As we mentioned before, Secret Invasion set during 2025, and Avengers Endgame is actually set during 2023. Falcon and the Winter Soldier happens just weeks after this, putting it in the summer of the same year. So Rhodey being captive for 2 years is still a long time, and you think about that in terms of your own life. Imagine what you were doing 2 years ago, and you can kind of see why it's so devastating for him to be locked up this long. I remember once, when I was a kid, I went on holiday for 2 weeks, and I came back, and my entire local shop had changed. It was mental, mate. I still haven't forgot it. But this shows how big of a time jump that 2 years could be. So judging on all that evidence, I think it paints out a clear picture, and Rhodey might have been grabbed right after the funeral. He probably wasn't thinking straight due to his friend dying, and this would also likely mean his senses weren't as strong. I think that the Skrulls grabbed him roughly after this point, possibly during a visit where he went out to a hospital. Armor Wars is likely going to clear this whole thing up, and I imagine that we'll get a scene showing when it happened. Now, if they say it was before Endgame, you know the whole blood thing, mate, and I hope you write in the comments on the trailer, you bloody son of a bitch, Feige, I'm coming to get your hat. And obviously, I'd love to hear your thoughts on when you think it went down, though, but I think going off the evidence, this is the most likely time. Please drop a like on the video, and if you want to support the channel as a member of the Spoiler Society, then please click the join button. You'll get early access to videos every week, and it goes such a long way to helping us out. We also have our merch store over at shopzeroedition.com, which sells lots of nerdy inspired t-shirts, hats and more. We're just about to close out on the Secret Invasion / Pulp Fiction inspired t-shirt, so if you want to head over there and help us out, then the link's in the description. Now if you want something else to watch, we've got a breakdown of the finale on screen right now, going over all the Easter eggs that pop up in the episode. Hopefully I see you over there, but if I don't, I won't hold it against you, and yeah, thank you for sitting through this part of the video as well. I've been your host, Paul, or Skrull, and I'll see you next time, mate. You take care of yourself. Peace.